On October 26, 2025, the Supreme Court announced it will review a pivotal federal law barring unlawful drug users from owning firearms. This decision marks the beginning of what could become one of the most consequential gun rights cases in recent history, drawing national attention and sparking intense debate across the country. This follows a lower court ruling that found the ban unconstitutional, setting up a major legal battle that could reshape the Second Amendment. Legal experts and advocacy groups on both sides are closely watching, as the outcome could have far-reaching effects on gun ownership laws nationwide. The law in question makes it a felony for anyone using or addicted to controlled substances to possess a gun, a rule long used to keep firearms from those deemed a public safety risk. For decades, this statute has been a cornerstone of federal gun regulation, intended to prevent potentially dangerous individuals from accessing weapons. With changing attitudes toward substances like marijuana, the law's broad reach is under scrutiny. As more states legalize cannabis and public opinion shifts, critics argue the law is outdated and unfairly targets otherwise law-abiding citizens. The Supreme Court will now decide if this restriction fits within the constitutional right to bear arms, applying a new standard that demands modern gun laws have clear historical roots. This test, established in recent rulings, requires the government to prove that such restrictions are consistent with the nation's tradition of firearm regulation. The case pits individual liberty against collective security. Should drug use alone be enough to strip someone of gun rights, or is the government justified in its concerns about violence? The answer could redefine the balance between personal freedom and public safety for millions of Americans. The court's ruling will send a powerful message about the future of gun control in America. Its decision could set a precedent that shapes not only gun laws, but also the broader relationship between individual rights and government authority for years to come. At the center of this legal storm stands Ali Daniel Himani, a man whose case has captured national attention and sparked heated debate across the country. His legal battle is set to test the very boundaries of the Second Amendment, raising questions about how far constitutional protections extend in a changing society. Himani was charged after authorities discovered him in possession of a firearm, while he openly admitted to using marijuana, a substance that, while still illegal under federal law, has been legalized for recreational or medicinal use in many states across the nation. His defense team argues passionately that stripping Himani of his gun rights solely for marijuana use without any evidence of impairment or violent behavior is a violation of his fundamental constitutional rights and personal freedoms. Importantly, Himani was not under the influence of marijuana at the time he was found with the firearm, a crucial detail that ultimately persuaded the lower court to rule in his favor, setting a significant legal precedent. His attorneys maintain that the current law is overly broad, punishing individuals for their status as marijuana users rather than for any actual dangerous or criminal actions. The case brings into sharp focus the ongoing clash between outdated federal drug laws and the rapidly evolving policies of individual states, highlighting a growing legal and cultural divide. Himani's fight has become a powerful symbol, serving as a proxy for millions of Americans who find themselves caught in the confusing and often contradictory space between state legalization and federal prohibition. The Supreme Court's upcoming decision will have far-reaching consequences, impacting not only Himani, but also countless others facing similar legal dilemmas in the future. The Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals sent shockwaves through the legal community by ruling that the federal gun ban for drug users was unconstitutional as applied to Himani. This unexpected decision challenged long-standing assumptions about the intersection of gun rights and drug laws, and immediately drew national attention from legal scholars, law enforcement, and civil rights advocates alike. The court determined there was no historical tradition of disarming sober citizens simply because they used drugs, even if those drugs were illegal. This finding broke with decades of precedent, where courts had routinely upheld such bans without closely examining their historical basis. Judges emphasized that during the founding era, laws were aimed at those who posed a clear and direct threat to public safety, not at private individuals who merely used intoxicants in their own homes. The ruling established a new, much higher bar for prosecutors. Now they must prove that a person was not only a drug user, but was actively intoxicated and dangerous while armed, rather than simply being a habitual user. This landmark decision directly conflicted with rulings from other federal circuits, setting the stage for a major legal showdown and making Supreme Court review all but inevitable. The Justice Department responded swiftly, filing an appeal and warning that the ruling could undermine federal efforts to keep firearms out of the hands of those considered dangerous. By focusing on actual impairment and dangerousness rather than mere status as a drug user, the lower court introduced a radical new approach to public safety law, one that could have far-reaching consequences. Now, all eyes turn to the Supreme Court, which must decide whether modern gun control laws must be firmly rooted in historical tradition to withstand constitutional scrutiny, or if new standards can be justified in today's society. The Justice Department is urging the Supreme Court to overturn the Fifth Circuit defending the gun ban as vital for public safety. They argue that history supports disarming those considered dangerous or irresponsible, a category that includes habitual drug users. The government points to the well-documented link between illegal drug use and violence, insisting the law is a necessary tool. This isn't a partisan issue. Both Republican and Democratic administrations have defended the statute. The Justitiepride des Department, Department warns that striking down the law would create a dangerous loophole, undermining efforts to prevent gun violence. They maintain that the Second Amendment has always allowed for reasonable limits to protect communities. The case hinges on the Supreme Court's new history and tradition test for gun laws, set in the 2022 Bruin decision. The government must show that banning drug users from owning guns aligns with regulations from the time the Second Amendment was adopted. The debate: did founding-era laws disarm people for personal habits, or only for threats to public order? The Fifth Circuit found no direct historical parallel, while the government argues the founders intended gun rights for virtuous citizens. The justices must now interpret centuries-old laws to decide if the modern ban fits the original meaning of the Second Amendment. Their decision will determine if a 20th century law can survive a test rooted in the 18th century. The outcome could set a precedent for all future gun regulations. The Supreme Court's ruling will have sweeping effects beyond drug users and guns. It will clarify how the history and tradition test applies to all modern firearm regulations. Striking down the ban could open the door to challenges against other restrictions, from domestic violence to misdemeanor convictions. The court's conservative majority has expanded gun rights before, but the outcome here is uncertain. Lawmakers nationwide are watching, as the decision could force changes to existing and proposed gun laws. A win for Hamani could expand gun rights. A win for the government would affirm its power to regulate for public safety. Either way, the ruling will reshape America's gun debate for years to come. With the Supreme Court set to hear the case, the next steps are clear. Oral arguments will be held soon, with justices grilling both sides on history and public safety. A decision is expected by June 2026, hinging on how the court applies the history and tradition test. The justices could strike down the law, uphold it, or find a middle ground by narrowing its scope. Whatever the outcome, the ruling will be a landmark for gun rights and regulation in America. Citizens, lawmakers, and legal experts are watching closely, knowing the decision will echo nationwide. The fate of one law and the future of the Second Amendment hangs in the balance.